Have you heard of Mike and Ike's? They're a fairly unimpressive brand of candy that hardly anybody talks about. Mike and Ike's and their close relative hot tamales are essentially just slightly fancier jelly beans. Not really much to talk about there. However, for a brief period, 10 years ago, people were actually talking about them due to one big campaign in which the titular duo broke up. Before we get to that though, let's understand what we're talking about. In the year 1923, a Russian Jewish immigrant by the name of Sam Bourne had a small candy shop in New York City called Just Bourne. He, alongside his brothers-in-law Irv and Jack Schaefer, created a new manufacturing company the same year by the same name as the store, Just Bourne. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, Just Bourne managed to do pretty well, and in 1932 relocated operations from the Big Apple to the little town of Bethlehem in Pennsylvania. Just 8 years later, Just Bourne created a new product for them to sell called Mike and Ike's. However, nobody, not even the people at Just Bourne, knows who made it. Even more mysterious is the name, Mike and Ike. Theories for the name are all over the place. Theories are as simple as the name comes from a company contest to name it, to in nearby Allentown there were circus dwarves performing named Mike and Ike, so the name is from them. And even a theory suggesting it comes from a popular comic about two twins named Mike and Ike who look alike. One theory that doesn't cover the whole name is that the Ike part comes from Dwight D. Eisenhower, who had the nickname Ike. Either way, Mike and Ike appear to not even be real people, and the origin of the name is still a mystery. The original Mike and Ike is the standard kind you'll often find, being a box of mixed fruity flavors. Things remained this way for over a decade until 1953, when Just Bourne acquired the Rada Candy Company. With the purchase, they didn't just acquire Peeps, but they also got some expertise in jelly bean production. This led Mike and Ike's to go from just a few fruit flavors like orange, lime, cherry, lemon, and strawberry, and outward into newer, more experimental flavors like root beer and cotton candy, both of which are no longer in production. Over the coming decades and even into the new millennium, dozens of flavors would go in and out of production. With the new millennium also came the rise of a fairly recent creation, the internet. The internet was a crazy place, a new frontier, the Wild West. With it came many possibilities, like connecting with new people, being able to display your interests and talents to people, being scarred by shock sites, and whatever your heart desires. However, what role should companies play in this new space? As broadband internet was rising in usage over old-fashioned dial-up, more people were gaining better access. Most companies found value working with social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube instead of fighting with them. With growing internet usage, many companies could use it as a platform to open up their products to more and more people. Just take your new show, movie, food, or whatever and say, "Hey, you, using this service. Do you like insert vaguely related thing here? Well, how about you try this?" Or maybe you could do
Crabfest is back at Red Lobster with 9 craveable crab creations. Perfect!
Either way, many companies were beginning to get their stakes in the internet, and Just Bourne was noticing. The people behind Mike and Ike wanted to open themselves up to a younger demographic of 13 to 17-year-olds, a fairly challenging demographic if I say so. It's estimated that by 2011, 77% of all people under the age of 25 in developed countries were using the internet, and 36% of people under 25 worldwide. Considering Mike and Ike's location, they'd have to worry more about the developed country graph. Since they wanted to appeal to that young demographic, the internet was a good place. However, how do they appeal to them? They can't just run ads on YouTube, Tumblr, or whatever and say, "Hey, have you tried Mike and Ike's?" That wouldn't work. Word of mouth is fairly difficult but would be the most effective. But Mike and Ike's are basically just fancy jelly beans. How do you get people talking about these? Take a look at the box, and what do you see? The names Mike and Ike. The duo has been together for a little over 70 years by this point. In the past, they were two mustachioed gentlemen that were eventually wiped. But what if we took them and gave them new faceless personas? And what if they broke up? "Wonderful idea," said the people in the boardroom. People love their celebrities, so treat them like celebrities going through a breakup. The plan was to announce on social media that Mike and Ike had broken up over creative differences, and to have boxes begin appearing in stores that appeared to be defaced. Mike would be a musician, and Ike would be an artist. Mike would blame Ike for focusing too much on his art, and Ike would blame Mike for focusing too much on his music. Perfect, said these office people. So the plan was put into motion. It was time for Mike and Ike to break up.
Hired to basically pretend as if Mike and Ike have had a breakup.
Years, Mike and Ike are splitting up.
In March of 2012, the plan was finally put into motion with posts building up to Mike and Ike's breakup. By the beginning of April, it was shown that the duo had separated and weren't on speaking terms. On April 4th, 2012, it was made official. Yes, it's true, we should have seen it coming. Mike and Ike have split up over creative differences about Mike and Ike candy, and they have left the building. We never thought it would come to this. They've lost it. The people did too. Many people decided to play along with the breakup, making their own reaction videos, making comments reacting to the announcement, and deciding to play sides.
Are you kidding, Team Mike?
Yeah,
Who are
Team
you?
Mike. If you had to choose between Mike and Ike, which one would you choose? And hello, base department?
By late April, every box you'd see was defaced. The boxes had one of the two names covered up as if it was scribbled over with a marker. On the back would be a message from whoever's name wasn't scribbled over. The messages had either apologizing for defacing the box, blaming the other for focusing too much on their other passion, and then telling you to go to Mike and Ike's Facebook. Mike blamed Ike for focusing too much on his graffiti art, and Ike blamed Mike for focusing too much on his music. The truth of the matter was unavoidable to consumers. The duo was done. The company decided to put together videos collecting reactions from celebrities, teens, and even Just Born employees. While the reactions were mostly people playing along with the marketing and pretending to be upset, some were genuinely unhappy with the change. President of the Family Research Council, Tony Perkins, accused the duo of being gay and the company of staging a gay divorce for attention. In the marketing, it was never explicitly stated what kind of relationship it was. The choice to keep it vague turned out to be rewarding, as the possibility of the two being gay only drew more attention towards Mike and Ike. For once, people were finally discussing Mike and Ike's. Over the coming months, small updates on Mike and Ike were released. Most of them were posted on Mike and Ike's now defunct Tumblr, and I was unable to find it, so we're gonna have to use Facebook. Alright, so, turns out I was putting the wrong link the entire time during research. Most of what's on the Tumblr was either not archived, or is not that interesting. Mike's music, what we're looking at right here, most of it is either unrelated stuff I don't care about, or Mike talking about music events and stuff. And then with Ike's art, it's just like him talking about like conventions, art events, his personal art. Like, there really isn't much here to look at. Heard Mike was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony this weekend catching the Beastie Boys induction. Rumor has it that Mike is a Beastie fan since Paul Revere. Word is he's headed to California next for Coachella. So Ike shared some of his latest work with reporters from Art News magazine. You think the split with Mike was a source of inspiration for his Power of Fruit collection? At one point, it was revealed that Mike had connections to rapper Blaze Kelly, and in May, a music video was released called Strawberry or Die. By June and July, billboards started popping up featuring the logo with a man on a ladder covering up one of the two names. In some cases, such as digital billboards, it would instead make it appear as if dead pixels were covering up a name. A mural was even painted in New York City dedicated to the duo, one side representing Mike and his music, and the other representing Ike's art. Time went on, and it was mostly the same, seeming as if the pair were growing further and further apart. Based on the Google Trends data, it also appears as if the hype train was running out of fuel. The shock was wearing off, and so something must be done. Well, the people behind Mike and Ike still had a few more tricks up their sleeve. Time for a vote. In October, a poll was posted to the Mike and Ike Facebook. The poll simply said to cast your vote for one of three options: Mike and Ike reunite, Ike, or Mike. In a landslide, 91% Mike and Ike reunite won. A few months later, a search was put out for the duo to find them and make them reunite. In January, negotiations for the two to finally come together began. This would continue all the way up until March, when the two were supposedly being seen together once again.
I saw Mike and Ike together. I was walking down the street, I saw a big splatter paint. Ike was standing there with a spray paint can, Mike was standing there with the guitar. We made eye contact, and I knew it was them. I saw Mike and Ike, they're back together.
People debated the authenticity of the clip in the comments, and one person had to be a buzzkill. However, the very next day, Mike and Ike had a huge announcement. They were officially back together, and this time with a new coat of paint. Not only did the packaging now feature the two back together, but also with a new style. The ads even showed people reacting to it. To go along with it, a small spoof movie trailer was also put together to advertise the duo's breakup and eventual makeup. Now, because they weren't done milking it yet, they even put together a small The Return of Mike and Ike Movie Mania sweepstakes in the middle of May. The sweepstakes concluded sometime around late July. Now that the advertising is done, let's check the costs. In 2011, before the advertising campaign began, Mike and Ike's were spending roughly $125,000 in advertising. The overall cost for the campaign was roughly $15 million. So an important question is, was the campaign worth it?
Yes!
According to Adweek, the brand saw its greatest increase in over a decade in 2012, with a 7.2% increase in sales and its social media accounts growing in followers. Its branded Twitter grew to over 2,500 followers, including at the time President of the US, Barack Obama. Donald Houston, senior marketing manager for Mike and Ike, even went on record saying that the Mike and Ike Facebook tripled to just under 1 million followers. However, it still has yet to hit 1 million followers. Today, Mike and Ike still isn't the biggest candy out there, nor is it the most talked about or researched topic. But it is still impressive how this unimpressive candy managed to garner so many people's attention for a whole year. I highly doubt that they'll hit a high like they did in 2012 to 2013, and they'll continue to be something the average person hears about maybe a few times a year. While the attention was short-lived, it certainly left a mark in the memory of many.